Okay, so I want to just do a real quick supplement on the Athaliah fiasco. The last video took so long to work through that rat's nest that you see on the sticky note next to me that I didn't want to, add this on, but it's at least worth knowing, I think. And so let me show you something just real quick about this. You'll notice on the left-hand side, the kings of Judah, that there's Jehoshaphat, who has a son named Joram. Joram marries Athaliah. Joram and Athaliah together have a son, Ahaziah. And Ahaziah dies. Athaliah takes the throne for herself. She eventually dies, and Ahaziah's son, Joash, becomes king in his place. I'm going to go to this timeline that we've been looking at, and I want to just kind of jump ahead here. Look at the south. You've got Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah, Athaliah, Ahaziah's son Joash, and we haven't talked about Amaziah yet, or Azariah, who's also called Uzziah, but that's what's coming up. What I would like to show you is the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew chapter 1. And I think the best place to start would probably be about verse 8. Matthew chapter 1, starting in verse 8. Asaph, that's Asa. Asaph was the father of Jehoshaphat, so that's starting with this whole thing that we're talking about now. Jehoshaphat was the father of Joram. We know about that. Joram was the father of Uzziah. Let's go back to our timeline. Joram was the father of Uzziah. Look at the kings and illegitimate queen who are passed over in the genealogy of Jesus. It says Joram was the father of Uzziah. That means we've totally left out Ahaziah, Athaliah, Joash, and Amaziah. It's not really difficult, I don't think, to understand why Matthew would want to just skip over this entire nightmare. I mean, it took us 40 minutes to draw a giant sticky note outlining everything, but it's connected to Ahab, and I'm not entirely sure what the exact reasons are, but I have an idea that I would at least like to offer to you. I'm going to go back to our Bible here real quick, and I want to look at 4 passages. All 4 of these passages say the same thing, so really we could only look at one, and that would be fine. The first one is Exodus chapter 20 and verse 5. This is the 10 Commandments, and this commandment starts in verse 4. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness. So no other gods, no carved images. And this is the thing that happens to a person who goes after these other gods. Verse 5, I am the Lord your God, starting here. I'm a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me. That's what I'm looking at. The 3rd and the 4th generations. The same thing is true in the Deuteronomy version of the 10 Commandments, Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 9. If you go after these other gods, I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me. So don't go after these other gods. And if you do, this is the consequence. There's another couple of passages that I think are worth knowing that still talk about this 3rd and 4th generation. Exodus 34 and verse 7 is one that describes the character of God. These next 2 passages do that. In Exodus 34 and verse 6, the Lord passed before Moses, said, the Lord, a God, here's what he's like. Merciful, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. And since we're looking at it, let's just look at the last one. The same thing. Numbers 14 and verse 18, the Lord is slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, forgiving the iniquity and transgression. He'll by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. And so, is that possibly the thing that we're seeing here on this chart? In the genealogy of Jesus, we go from Jehoshaphat to Jehoram, and you will remember that Jehoram married through a marriage alliance Ahab's daughter. Ahab was super bad on the top. That's why he's at the top of that peak, like the worst. He is the worst king, and then he introduces Baal worship, I guess his wife Jezebel, and he goes along with it. And so Ahab's daughter, Athaliah, marries Jehoram, and then their child together is Ahaziah, and Ahaziah is named after one of Ahab's sons who was king of Israel and died, Athaliah's brother. And Joash, Ahaziah's son, Joash was a good king, but he kind of fits into this whole thing. So what do we have here? Joram skips over Ahaziah, Athaliah, Joash. Or maybe you can start it like this. That's 4 generations. Jehoram, you've got Ahaziah, Athaliah, Joash. I'm not entirely sure if this is the exact reason, but if you go back to Matthew chapter 1 in the genealogy of Jesus, Asaph was the father of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was the father of Joram. Joram was the father of Uzziah. Every once in a while, somebody in a Bible class will say something like, well, I don't know, Matthew left some things out. Matthew made a mistake. This is one of those inconsistencies with the Bible. The Bible contradicts itself. The Bible does not contradict itself. This is not a mistake. The thing that's really useful to know is that Matthew is just skipping over this entire nightmare because this is one of those things that we would like to forget ever happened. And once you know that, you can say, oh, hey, yeah, I understand why these are left out. But what you would probably want to do is you would want to go to Matthew chapter 1 and write in the margin of your Bible those kings that have been left out and point yourself back to this sticky note. All right. I hope that was helpful. Next time, we're going to talk about Jehu's bloody purge and him cleaning up this giant nightmare.